Hello and welcome to the Good Employment Chatter. I'm Sharon McDonnell, Membership Manager at the Charter, and today we're talking about workforce culture in construction, what people actually experience when they enter the sector, and how a shift in culture and behaviours could help open the door for more women in the sector. I'm really pleased to be joined by Renée Preston, CEO of Galloway Construction, founder of Construction for Women, and the driving force behind the National Site Standard. Renée, it's lovely to have you on.
Thanks very much, Sharon. It's great to be here.
So before we get into it, for people listening who may not know you and your background, can you tell us a little bit about you and what's really driven your focus around this?
So I'm, as I said, Renée Preston from Galloway Construction. We're a family-run company, a nationwide contractor. And as I was telling you a little bit before, my husband asked me to join Galloway after we had the children. And so I kind of fell into construction. I married into it, I often tell people. And whilst I was on site and whilst I was sort of, at the early days of sort of getting into sort of like my pre-con side of the business. So I do all the pre-con and up to run the tender team, up to time of handover. Ian runs the back end of the company. But I still was feeling the pressure of being on site in that intimidating environment on site, and sort of like fast forward even sort of like, 5-6 years down the line, and I'll be on site and having some really negative experiences with the brickies is one I always give an example of sort of like just, walking on site and seeing they've not got the correct PPE on and saying, come on, listen, guys, can you go and get your PPE on, please? Because, if you don't, then obviously it's me as a director who ends up with egg on their face. And you end up getting quite a few profanities and a few who they have to think you are and that kind of thing. And some days it's okay, but some days you just, you feel like, why am I having to put up with this kind of abuse? Well, on this one particular occasion, it really annoyed me because I said to the guys, obviously, go and get your PPE on or we need to get off site. And the profanity was quite explicit. So I sort of got in the car and I was like, oh God, is this happening again? It's always the same, same situation. Who do you think you are, kind of thing. And I went home that night and I was like, oh yeah, I've had a bit of grief from the brickies again. And Ian was like, why did you take it? And it kind of annoyed me. I was like, well, sometimes it's just, it feels intimidating. So anyway, next day he goes on site, same scenario, didn't have their PPE on, kicked them off site. And I was just like really annoyed. I was like, oh, why didn't I do that? But you shouldn't go to work feeling intimidated and or often being the only woman in that environment, and sort of like joining up the dots. We've got a needs crisis, we've got a skills shortage, we've got a population average age is a 48-year-old white male working on a building site, and that's the average age. So join up the dots. So I was like, how do we encourage more women into the industry, and how do we support them being here? But then the next step from that is how do we support that culture shift for everybody? Because like I just said, you've got an average age of a man's 48 who's been working on site for 30 years and hasn't been working with women. We've got 1% women on site, but we've got a skills shortage. So it's about joining up those dots.
And it just shows you, from your position as well as director at the time, going on to site, and you're quite a strong woman, having spoken to you, how you felt intimidated. Can you imagine if that was a young woman?
Well, exactly.
On site?
Like even down to, like, I'm ashamed to say it, but I got on site at 7:00 one morning last year. Okay, it's 7:00 on a Monday morning, but I went to go to the toilet and the women's toilets was locked and I was fuming. And it was met with a little bit of, well, it's not that bad, just go get the key. And a locked toilet for a woman is not just go get the key. That's more saying we're not set up for you, we're not ready for you. And that was one of my Galloway sites. And so it's another thing where I was just like, do you know what? The only way this is going to change this is I shift the dial, and if I change this, because my site team even think that I'm being dramatic, but if I've got a young 17-year-old and we have a KPI at Galloway of 3 T-level students on all our sites at any one time, and often, I'm always looking out for the women on those courses and bringing them through, and I want to nurture them and I want to meet with them and I want to support them. I certainly don't want them getting on site and seeing that we're not ready for them, because that's what locked toilets say, and it's saying we're not ready for you to be here.
It sort of begs a question, why has it taken so long? As you say, there's a massive skill shortage within construction. You've got an ageing workforce and you've got half of the population that really aren't in the talent pool for recruiting.
Well, yeah, there's 156 different roles in construction, and it's still that sort of fallback, especially because we have a STEM program at schools, so I do have quite a lot of engagement with schools, and it's still that fallback career of considered that sort of even what the teachers would say, the thick kids, which if we look at me in that bracket, like I'm neurodiverse, I'm very ADHD, as my team will tell you, my brain goes everywhere, here, there and everywhere, and I've got dyslexia, and I do see the correlation in construction to, well, let's get there's a lot of neurodiversity in construction, but why aren't we nurturing? Why aren't we looking at, not just the neurodiverse kids, but also you've got a whole skill set of STEM. And when we teach in STEM, and I pertain it now, so when we go into schools, I'm like, which of these 156 roles in construction do you think pertains to STEM? Well, we should be doing that from the get-go, especially when you're getting to sort of like picking your career choices. It shouldn't be the fallback career. And it is. And there's quite a few barriers to entry in construction. It is that attraction piece. We're not marketing ourselves. Hospitality market themselves really well. Retail market themselves really well. Construction just wait for the fallback of, oh, we fell into construction, or in my case, married into it. If we actually start to market ourselves in the correct way, we'll attract more people. But also, most building sites will only allow you to work there at 18. And not everybody wants to go to college for 2 years. Not everyone can go for I couldn't go to college when I left school at 16. I went to uni when I was older because I was probably ready for it. But then with my neurodiversity, I just couldn't wait to get out and get a job. And we don't have, it's all down to the employer as an SME. It's all down to us now to take on the apprentices and upskill. Whereas I think we should bring something like a YTS scheme back and get people at grassroots learning at 16, because those people that are 48 years of age that are are a atypical person, they started their career possibly on a YTS, possibly learning, making the brews, filling the skips, checking the materials in. What do you want me to do now, boss? What next? I've had T-level students on site, and when I've gone to them and said, right, okay, I want you to check all those materials, I want you to fill that skip, and we've got, Sparky coming on site later, you can shadow them, see what they're doing, just giving them a sort of like a broad spectrum of what it looks like on that day. I've been met with, I'm not doing that, it's beneath me. So it's about managing expectations as well. We want to support youngsters coming into the industry, but you also have to manage their expectations. And I made the brews when I was younger. I still make the brews now. I go around the office and make sure everyone's got a brew. That's what we do. And it's just, I think there's a lot to be said about sort of marketing what the possibilities are, but also that managing the expectations at the get-go.
And I think moving forward with the adoption of AI, construction's a fantastic sector to move in for, especially women, where we see a lot of them in administration roles. This could be ideal for them.
Oh yeah, we've got all the digital twin, AI modelling. There's an awful lot of movement. When you've got your drone surveys, there's traditionally women are great at STEM subjects, and we've got some fabulous engineers. There's so many roles for women to have in construction, and then when some people say to me, it's just not a place for women. And one of my examples that I just love is somebody said to me, they challenged me, said, a woman can't be a dry liner. She hasn't got big enough hands. She can't pick up the boards. They just can't do it. So I got my phone out and I went on YouTube and I said, look at this woman. And she was on stilts. She was putting the boards up on stilts and she was absolutely smashing it. And I'm like, do not think that this is just a job for men. Like, you've got to get out of that mindset, because we're in this mess because we've been in this mindset of saying it's not a job for women, when there's, like I say, 156 different positions for women. And I encourage my QSs, my female QSs, to get on site and sort of, because they need to be able to spot a variation. They need to be able to do their job. They can't do their job from behind a desk, and they need to be engaging with both client and site team and building those relationships up. But there's so many aspects now for women to be in the industry. Equally, there's no job that a man can do that a woman can't do.
Yeah. I know that construction do a lot of work within schools and colleges around promoting the industry. Why is that not landing with, girls of that age?
I think it does land. I mean, I set up Construction for Women 2.5 years ago. And it was around about, why did I set it up? It's a social value piece. So obviously contractors have got to, when they tender, there's a certain element of social value now. And I was looking at, well, what do I want to do? And it's obviously evolved and grown, and now it's a not-for-profit organisation. But back when I originally started it as a social value piece, and it's like, how do we make a difference? And we know from colleges that we've gone in and given taster days in that their intake for the next year is increased. So it's making that proposition earlier. It's showing them what is possible. And also in areas of extreme deprivation, like I went to Croydon last year, we gave a 90-girl engagement on a taster day in construction. I actually came home, I sat in the car and just broke my heart afterwards, because the girls were coming up to me going, Miss, why have you done this for us? Like, why did you set this day up? It's amazing. And I said, what do you mean? Why? Well, no one does anything like this for us. And I mean, they literally were the poorest of kids, and they didn't know what was possible. And they'd done some plastering sessions, and they'd done some joinery sessions. And then I was telling them what kind of salary they could expect. Mm-hmm. And they were like, this is really exciting. So you've got 15-year-old girls, 14, 15-year-old girls who have got 3 generations of unemployment around them. They've got nobody giving them a push or an arm around them to say, this could be your career pathway. This is the type of money you can earn. I think construction, which I'll sound a bit funny here because it's always been perceived as a very working class industry. I think it's looking through the eyes of a very middle class environment, and you need to stop doing that, and you need to start realising that sometimes just actually going in and engaging with students and saying, you've got bricklayers in an 80 grand here, guys. You've just done a bricklaying session there. How did it go? Did you enjoy it? What did you think about it? Do you think you could do that? But then understanding what career pathway they could have and what's out there, it sparks that excitement in them. And then they actually don't just want to go to college. They actually want to go to college and get that job and get that salary. Mm-hmm. Or even sometimes when I go into, because I do some guest sort of lecturing at colleges, and there was 23 bricklayers the other week, and there were 16 on T-level students. And the first question I asked them was, what salary will you get when you leave here? And they didn't have a clue. They didn't know from 30k to 50 to, they just didn't know. And then I also said, put your hands up, how many of you want to move out and get your own place when you're 20? And they all stuck their hands up. And I said, how much do you need to earn to do that? Of course they didn't know. I think where we're letting young people down, we're not managing their expectations of, if you earn this is what you've got at the end of the week or the end of the month, and this is how you can live your life. And it feels very sort of nanny state, doesn't it? Where you're just like, you're not giving them those tools to then go and do it themselves. It feels like quite nurturing in a way, but it's holding youngsters back.
Yeah, without doubt. And we'll come back to that later, but I just want to go through, because you've been really clear that the skills shortage doesn't just come about from recruitment. You know, the culture needs to land when somebody gets on site. And from a wider concept, what business benefits would that lend?
Okay. We're losing 42% of people in the first 5 years. So that just goes to show that the culture's wrong, or something's massively wrong here. Both men and women leaving, but we've only got 2% of women working on site. So the men are leaving as well. So, and why is that? We've also got really high suicide rate and high mental health problems. We absolutely know that working on sites is not an easy job. And from a contractor's point of view, from myself, we go in on a very, very short margin. So our team know that, they need to be very efficient, and, it's high pressured. I know if you have a gender balanced work environment, productivity increases. So programs will run on time, and we will then benefit financially. So from a financial point of view, whoever's looking at this, a gender balanced work environment means that everybody gains. We start to reduce that skills shortage, and we also start to improve that culture. And we also, what we need to do is we need to make sure that that environment feels safe for those people and feels like somewhere that you want to go to work every day. And at the moment, yes, I want to see more women on site, but I also want to see the safety of the men on site. I want to know that their mental health is being looked after and that they want to go to work, because there's nothing worse than literally waiting all week for the weekend to come because you're not enjoying those 5 days. Life's too short for that.
That's a really high number, that 52%.
42%
losing. When you think of the cost to recruitment, the loss of that knowledge, the downtime from filling these people in, and also the impact that has on the wider team when people keep leaving, and on clients as well. So it's a massive business impact, that.
Well, it massively affects a project. If you've got all that knowledge on a project and then someone's gone, and then that's going to put your project behind. And also it creates, you've got to put a new team in, or a new person in the team who doesn't necessarily know what's happening. That upsets the client, that upsets the subcontractors. It's just, you want a continuity and you want to have that retention. You want to support that. I mean, Construction for Women, we've got one of the highest mentoring platforms in the UK now. We've got over 200 women being mentored. And when you have a mentor, you're 5 times more likely to stay in your role. But also, one fact which I love about this is you can expect a 20% pay increase. And there is a gender pay gap still. So by being mentored, we're closing that gender pay gap, but we're also supporting that person in that role to feel that they've got that safe space to be able to say what it is they feel, which is, during that safe space is where I realised just how bad the culture was. I talked earlier about me having bad experiences, but it's across the board. And so you can't attract and retain if the culture's just wrong.
Definitely. And I'll come back to the women in construction and the mentoring later. But just for now, introduce the National Site Standards. What does it look like?
So the National Site Standard came about last year because we had all this success of all the women that were being mentored. And last year we took 156, where we had 156 women sign up for UK Reef. And we gave them sessions on imposter syndrome and how to network successfully. And then we brought them in like sort of like the alumni of Construction for Women. And we were mentoring. And then the mentors were phoning me and saying, Renée, we're volunteering for this. You asked us to do this. But we weren't prepared. Like, you've told us to go through the R's and R's and make sure that they're fulfilling the R's and R's, and how can they, you know, grow within that career pathway. But these women are being bullied. Some of them have had sexual harassment. They feel like they're being abused, or they feel like they're like, you know, if there's, or just kind of like those gender sort of expectations. Oh, there's a Teams day. Oh, the woman will organise it. Oh, you're all sat in a room, right? You take the minutes. Or, you know, oh, who's going to make the brews? You are. And that might seem like a really small thing, but if it's every day of your life, and it's not being divvied up to everybody else, it can feel like you are being pigeonholed just because you're female. But there was more. It went even deeper than that, and it wasn't just one or two people. It was across the board with everybody, and I was like, now I feel like a Trojan horse. Now I feel like we've had all these 800 girls in a taste day in construction. I'm standing there saying how fabulous it is, fabulous. I've got all these women being mentored. We're trying to retain them in industry. Well, it's broken. And I know it's broken because sometimes, you know, I'm a grown woman. I run my own company. I'm strong. And yet even days I don't want to walk on site. This is not right. And then every time I go on LinkedIn, I can see that, you know, the suicide rates increasing again, and there's more mental health, and there's, you know, another CIC popping up for, you know, for supporting mental health on sites. So, I took the time out to write it all down. What's wrong from a locked toilet and feeling locked out of an industry? How do we fix it? And so I went through piece by piece and then looked at what I had, and I'd basically written the National Site Standard. And then I thought, surely this is out there, you know, so go through everything in health and safety, or go through all your ISOs, go through it. All right, it's actually not. So nobody has ever before put a framework together for how we support personnel on site, and what does that best practice look like, and how can we consistently have that. So then I just realised immediately what the problem was. We don't have any reporting system to support our personnel. And yeah, of course, we all have human resources, but that's almost like a fallback, isn't it? There's a problem, let's go to human resources. No one's actually saying, how do we support our staff on site? So that's what the National Site Standard is about. It's about readdressing your induction process, changing your RAMs, making sure that you've got the correct PPE, that you've got the correct welfare in place, that you have an appointed person who can make sure that once you are audited and accredited, that you uphold that. Having a whistleblowing policy. So on the back of every toilet door of every single National Site Standard site, there's a QR code. And if you feel that the National Site Standard isn't being adhered to, and that there is poor language or poor communication or bullying or anything that you feel, man or woman, I mean, the standard is there for everybody. It's to improve the culture for everybody. The QR code is there. You scan it, you fill in the form, and then you go about your business. And then it's down to us as the National Site Standard to police it, go back to the site, address it, investigate it, and make those improvements. Possibly policing is the wrong word, because I don't want people to feel that like there's a, you know, that's hanging over them. It's about going and engaging, isn't it? And seeing what can we do, or escalating something that is quite dangerous for people on site. What I also want is for the National Site Standard, it starts at the education piece. So we've engaged with a lot of universities and colleges now, and they're going to uphold the standard. That shows men and women, okay, well, if we go to that college and from day one they're practicing the standard, well, that's a safe space for us. On a site, if you walk onto a National Site Standard site, you now know that that is a safe space. You now know that the people that you're working for care more about their personnel. And as a byproduct of that, as a result of that, then yes, as I said earlier, the programs will run on time. There'll be less personnel turnover. It benefits everybody. Commercially it makes sense, and for your health and well-being it makes sense.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's something that we see. I see a lot of synergy with the standard and the charter. It's something that we see a lot with employers. Those that adopt that positive culture have the right behaviours in place, values as a business. They don't tolerate certain behaviour. We see productivity rise, they're able to recruit and attract wider talent, better talent, and the retention's high and the sickness is low. And we see it over and over again with the employers that we work with. So there's a real business benefit to this.
Yeah.
But some of the things in the standard are quite practical and will be easier to change. Things like your PPE and your welfare, toilets, and some elements of your safety. But the culture and the psychological safety and shifting that historic norms is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
How do you envisage that's going to work?
We have to have a starting point, but I understand that over the next 3 years, we'll start with toolbox talks. We'll start with coming in and educating the site team. It needs to be from the top down as well. It needs to be from the leadership. They need to want that culture to change. British Telecom made a shift quite a few years ago, and they recognised that if they had a 2-to-1 ratio on Openreach, that they were getting less problems from, sort of public complaints. And then sort of, if you think about when Openreach are sort of closing a road, and then, you got the general public, and there was quite a lot of amnesty happening in those scenarios. So they switched it to 2-to-1, and those scenarios all but sort of disappeared because there was just more softer skills around that gender balance. So I don't think the shift will happen overnight, even once you have been accredited and we're auditing. I think year on year, we're going to see marked improvements. And then year on year, those KPIs will shift in terms of how many, that structure will shift. How many women do you have on site in comparison? Or, what does diversity look like on your site? And then we're kind of controlling that and gathering that data and looking at that and seeing those changes. So it won't sort of shift that dial immediately, but by sheer fact of you're engaging and you're being audited and you know that you've got another audit coming up, I think it will definitely change the culture. I'd like to think in 5 years' time, if we look at it in a 5-year plan, it will look very differently. And the sheer fact that some really big companies like Platform Housing Group, Keepmo, NHS Property Services, Global Switch, SLR, really big companies have come and said, we think this is required and needed, and we're willing to back it and support it, and we're now going to mandate it. That speaks for itself. That speaks volumes. They see there was a need for this. I had a great conversation with CIOB the other day. They're like, this is brilliant. We really need this in our industry. The people have seen it and recognised it. It's just now, this is where the real work begins, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you see the biggest barrier in implementing it?
I mean, there's a financial cost, of course there is, but there's a financial cost with an ISO, with CHAS or Construction Line or Considered Construction Scheme or any of those. So I think the barrier will be, and I'm a contractor, and I came up against this recently. I went to Chester Aces and there was quite a lot of other contractors there, and they gave me a lot of grief. They were like, are you serious? You're putting another tax on the contractor? And that's what it feels like. It feels like a tax. And I appreciate that would be the first barrier in my mind, is someone says, I don't want to pay for this. And I'm very mindful of that. So the value that I want to make sure that the contractor sees that they gain in this, they will gain in their social value. We will document that, and they'll be able to use that social value in their next tenders. It'll end up being a small beer. It won't be a tax. It'll end up being a small beer. When you start winning contracts because you're part of the national site standard, and it's mandated anyway, for quite a lot, of local authorities will begin to mandate it. They'll see financial gain, and like I say, it'll end up being an integral part of, this is what we do day to day to support our staff.
Mm. And I think that's where you'll see the shift.
Yeah.
And it start being linked to procurement as well. And it's good that it's a standard, so that, it sets out the framework for what good looks like, isn't it?
I mean, the important thing is that it is a governance framework. So, that we're a governance team. It's obviously it was my brainchild, and it came from like my lived experience and the lived experience of all the women that we've been mentoring. But now it's being handed over into the governance team to make sure that we get it spot on, because there will be bits that I haven't thought of or that we'll come up against that we need to improve on. And that's part of that governance team. It's let's keep improving, let's keep moving it forward, let's keep shifting the dial, but let's make sure that we have an industry that we're proud of, and that we are inclusive, and that we are reducing that skills gap by encouraging more people into the industry.
Mm. And I guess from when I've read it, I've sort of looked at it that it's been developed around lived experience of women, but it very much will have an impact on the wider workforce. And is that how you're positioning it?
That's totally how I'm positioning it. It's quite funny when you think about, from if I put my marketing hat back on, I think with what's happened with Donald Trump recently in terms of like support for EDI in the industry is kind of waned, and people think it's okay to not support diversity, and okay, we'll just go back to our old way of doing things. But this is commercially makes sense, and I think that's where we will market it and position it as well, because there's two elements here. And I think once people start to realise that commercially they're going to make more money, then that's when it will grow exponentially.
Coming back from the work that you do around construction for women, because you're the founder of that as well, I don't know how you fit this all in, Renée, to be fair. But that's around mentoring, isn't it? Mentoring for women in the construction industry. And I'm really interested in that, because the National Site Standard looks at the entry point, getting everything right, so women can experience what women experience when they come in on site. And then you've taken it to another level around mentoring, so that, women can progress and sit at the table where decisions are made, which will effectively then have a massive impact on site conditions as well, when women in the room making those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really proud actually of where it's gone. So obviously last year we won quite a lot of awards for construction for women, and it was kind of like I felt like the industry put their arm around me and said, well done, and I've self-funded construction for women for 2.5 years. But I mean, it did originally start as a social value piece for me, and then it grew and grew. And now, which it's standalone CIC, but we're in 12 cities. So we've got 12 regional chairs with their city hubs, and they've all got KPIs, and they're all volunteering their time, just as I have been doing. So within their KPIs is one next generation conference for 100 women every year. And it's for women that are new to the industry in the first 3 years. So ours is on the 8th of October. So the Manchester one is the 8th of October, and KPMG's offices. And we will have sessions on imposter syndrome and growing your network, and sort of like, looking at sort of the industry as a whole. And I suppose, looking at that national site standard, but looking at like now social value and how important their careers are within our industry, and how valued they are to us. We want to make them see their value, but each woman will get a mentor in that city. So at the moment, that means if we hit our target, we'll have 1,200 women being mentored nationally each year. And then they've all then got their KPIs to do what I've been doing. So that we reached 800 girls on a taster day in construction. Now they've got 3 taster days to deliver in each of the cities. And normally you can get around about 50 to 90 young women on those taster days. So what we're doing is we've got the regional chairs. They then bring in ambassadors, and then they bring in the mentors as well. So we've got this pyramid of people who are part of that alumni and want to support and want to help. And predominantly, a lot of my mentors for the mentees are women. And given there's only 14% of women in industry, I keep giving a shout out to the men. I'm now getting more male mentors coming forward and going, okay, we didn't realise we could. I was like, of course, like there's 86% of you that can give and impart your advice. So that business model now is just going to keep like supporting women every year in industry. And so we're looking for sponsors in each city to sponsor those events and make sure that they happen. And that's how Construction for Women will keep growing.
That's really interesting, because it's really important, the male allyship piece, isn't it? Because this isn't a women's issue. This is a workplace issue.
Yeah, of course.
So it's great that you're bringing them along as well.
Yeah, so in Leeds, we've got my regional chair, Freddie Whitehead, who works for Waits. Yeah, he's my regional chair at Leeds, and we've got quite a few male mentors as well. So we are trying to encourage more men to be part of it, and he's really excited to sort of like to start his journey. And I've got a bit of I'm trying to create a bit of rivalry between all the cities of like, oh, who's doing what, who set up their next generation conference, or who's done their first taster day. And so just kind of handed that baton over now. You know, I've set it up, I've got that formula, I know what we need to do. We need to have early engagement at year 9s. We then have to support with the mentoring programs. And then we have our next gen conferences. So that baton's been handed over so I can focus on the national site standard and also keep Galloway Construction going as well.
Just coming back to, because I'm really conscious of time now, Will, I always go over. It's really interesting that you didn't start your journey in construction, and you've had some very different experiences in the world of work. And then you've come into it relatively later. Do you think there's a gap here in terms of, you know, bringing women in that have got skills that can be adapted into construction as well?
Absolutely. I've met quite a lot of women, and a lot of women reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, oh, I fell into construction about 7 years ago, and, you know, in auditing and drone surveys, or in marketing roles and business development roles. And I do see a lot of women in social value roles as well. I kind of like, it's almost like they're being pigeonholed into that role as well, which makes me smile a lot. But there's still a lot of career opportunities when you're a returning mother, for sure. And I think that's something that we really need to start looking at, because, again, I mean, I'm generalizing here, but, you know, if you're a returning mother and you've kind of gone through sort of like those hard years of bringing up your family, you're probably a little bit more thick-skinned as well. So, you're more adaptable to a changing environment than somebody that's just fresh out of college. So there is a skill set of women there that we're not tapping into as well.
Yeah, it's about recognising those transferable skills and experiences and opening up the recruitment to, recognise that and attract that, isn't it? So I suppose in 5 years' time, what's your vision for this to be a success? What would you?
I would like to walk on a building site. Obviously, that building site is a national site, standard site, but I want to walk on that site and I want to see a more gender balanced work environment. And I'm not expecting a 50-50, especially in 5 years' time, but I would like there to be way more diversity as well. We can't just have this scenario. We've got an average age of a 48-year-old white male working on our site. We need to start being more diverse. And I'm in 5 years' time, it would give me the biggest smile to know that we are closing that skills gap. We are reducing we are being more inclusive and supporting those men that I've talked about, making sure that their health and well-being is at the front of our, front and foremost. So getting on that site, seeing that the national site standards being implemented for 5 years and seeing that massive change would just put the biggest smile on my face for sure.
It'd be great to catch up with you in 5 years' time because I'm sure you're going to do it. Renée, it's been lovely talking to you. I think what's really come through is that it's not just about getting more women into construction, it's about what they experience when they're on site as well, and the wider impact that this standard will have on all the workforce culture within the industry. So best of luck with it.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for listening.